Coming to you live from the beautiful Gulf Coast of Florida, home of the Naval Air Station Pensacola and the Blue Angel, Eglin Air Force Base and Hurlburt Field. This is another edition of Forward March with your hosts, Al Gilley and David G. Lanfair.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Forward March. I'm David G. Lanfair.
And I'm Al Gilley.
Our sponsor for today's show is Harley-Davidson of Pensacola. Until you've been on a motorcycle like the Harley-Davidson, you haven't been on a motorcycle.
Well, David, we have a very exciting show today. We're going to pay tribute to those very special men and women who are with our U.S. Army, our U.S. Navy, our U.S. Air Force, the Coast Guard, and the Marine Corps. We're talking about the most vital parts of our military or defense.
So are we talking about focusing on some sort of special operations or black ops or something secret? You know I'm cleared for secret.
I know you are, David, but that's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about are the operations, logistics, and readiness part of the military. We're talking about the folks who transport our Army and our Navy and the other folks in our military. We're talking about those who do maintenance, supply, quartermaster, logistics, and readiness, and those type of units. That's what we're going to be talking about. The folks that make the American military run and give our military operation some operational superiority. The servicemen and women who are the backbone of the American military.
I couldn't agree more, Al. The U.S. military is under more pressure than any other large organization to operate like a well-oiled machine. It's not just about meeting goals for delivering a product, but lives are on the line for each soldier, sailor, and airman. They all depend on the success of the way our U.S. military operates.
And it's not only the soldiers that depend upon it, the American public depends upon it. I mean, we're in terrorist type wars and wars that could come here to our shores. Mm-hmm. So our military is important for the lives of our public also.
Absolutely. We're going to talk with two military commanders who've had the experience of directing operations, from managing bases, directing all sorts of operations, from operational support to large military commands and moving them from one AOR, operational readiness location, to another, including all the equipment, the buildings, and the people.
Well, it sounds like we're going to be talking about almost all aspects of the military.
Exactly. But first, let's take a break. We're going to come back soon and see what it takes to run a military and operate. Stay with us.
Work.
Great.
Need to just cut it down?
What's the status?
Network's up 100%.
Hi, how was your weekend?
It was great.
In the Army Reserve, all it takes is 1 weekend a month and 2 weeks a year to get the skills, training, and strength of being in the Army.
And we're back. We have a great show for you today. We're going to talk about what it takes to support a military combat unit and all its people and equipment, and what it takes to move those units for deployment and then return them back to their base.
But first, David, let's talk a little bit about the history of armies and how they trained how they were housed and how they moved their armies from one place to the other. That seems like that would be very interesting.
Yeah, what we're going to be talking about is military logistics. Basically, that's the planning of and the carrying out of the movement of all military forces. That includes the maintenance that's required as well, okay, keeping everything in the best shape possible, including our soldiers, sailors, and airmen.
And that includes a whole lot of things that folks don't even think about. The development, acquisition. First of all, when I start saying this, because just take a look at any piece of equipment, and from the beginning of that equipment to the end of it. You talk about the development, acquisition, storage, distribution, maintenance. We're talking about evacuation of that equipment and disposition of material. We're talking about the transport of our personnel. We're also talking about the acquisition and construction of our facilities and running those facilities. The acquisition and furnishing of services, and this is the one that I didn't know when I first got in the Army, was that logistics is also responsible for evacuating our soldiers and giving them medical care, getting them from the battlefield, the health and medical services. It's very important.
It's huge. It takes a lot of people, it takes a lot of work, and it takes a lot of in-depth planning to keep everything running smoothly. No wonder the word logistics comes from the Greek word logistica, meaning to calculate.
Well, David, let's go back to Roman times. Armies really didn't worry about moving their weapons and food in combat. They carried whatever ammunition that they needed, whatever weapons they needed, each soldier carried it. And if they needed to eat or sleep on the run, they raided the local population for food and shelter. And if they were going on a long campaign, they bought everything on ships, wagon trains, on the backs of the soldiers, pack animals, any way they could get that material with them, they did it. But by the time of the Industrial Revolution came around in the 1800s, a third method of maintaining an army came into existence. Remember, the first method was they stole, they killed wild animals. The second method was they moved along, carried everything they could, and they had this long train of folks following them with whatever they needed. And now, with the Industrial Revolution, a third came around. That was the rear area. With all the factories and everything that were being developed during those times, they were able now to put up a rear and supply to the front.
You know, and if you add in today's new technology with airplanes and special weapons like the laser weapons and amphibious ops, it sounds something like a science fiction movie, an army of the future.
I agree. And this new technology and special weapons and things that we have is something that we have to deal with, and it probably will change the military. In the American Civil War, 1861 to 1865, both armies used railroads extensively for transporting their personnel, supplies, horses and mules, heavy field pieces, whatever they needed, they had the trains to do it. Both tried to disrupt the enemy's logistics and their strategy by destroying the railroad tracks and bridges. And in World War I, 1914 to 1918, submarines were used to keep shipping lanes open and transport special personnel and goods.
That's right, Al. Here are some interesting statistics. From 1776 to September 2012, a total of 40 million people have served in the United States Armed Forces. As of December 2013, about 1.4 million were on active duty in the Armed Forces, with an additional 850,000 people in the 7 reserve components. There are approximately 19.6 million military veterans that we provide retirement benefits for and medical care. They're not even included in those numbers. The U.S. military is the world's largest military, except to the China's People's Liberation Army, but it's by far the most technologically efficient and has the most coverage, with troops deployed strategically around the world in over 150 different countries.
So with that large of outfit, what is the most expensive aspect of our military? Is it research and development, technology? What is it?
Oddly enough, you would think it's R&D. Okay?
I would think so.
But it's not. What it really is our biggest expense is U.S. military benefits, the health care, and fuel. Fuel is huge.
And considering that, I bet you could tell me what is the largest component of it? What is the largest branch?
Well, the largest branch is the United States Army.
Hooah!
Okay, that's followed by the other primary services, the Air Force, then the Navy, the Marine Corps, and the U.S. Coast Guard, with the National Guard and Reserve components in there.
What an enormous operation, but an important operation that protects our country, our allies, and safeguards our folks here at home. It looks like almost 70% of the United States military are responsible for logistics, life support, and administration. So, to all of our servicemen and women who are in the logistics arena, we say a big hurrah to you for keeping our American military a well-oiled machine.
I agree. Thank you for your service. Now let's take a short break. Stay right there. We'll be right back.
Home is where the heart is. Making sure that your home is cool and comfortable this summer is what Barbera Heating and Air is all about. Barbera Heating and Air has served both residential and commercial customers in the Gulf Coast community for more than 40 years. Summer is upon us. Call us now to schedule an appointment to check your AC unit. Mention Forward March and receive a 10% discount. Barbera Heating and Air, where your comfort is our business. Don't wait. Call today. Call 850-476-8638.
And we're back. I'm David G. Landfair.
And I'm Al Gilly. Our sponsor for today's show is Harley-Davidson of Pensacola, where they show their customers every day that unless you've been on a Harley-Davidson motorcycle, you haven't been on a motorcycle.
We have two great guests today, United States Navy Captain Catherine Erb and retired United States Marine Corps Lieutenant General Dwayne Thiessen. Captain Erb is the commanding officer for the Center for Naval Aviation Technical Training on board NAS Pensacola. General Thiessen was the commander of the U.S. Marine Forces Pacific, which includes all the Marines in the Pacific Theater. But before we get started, let's talk about some of the great events coming up here in our Gulf Coast area.
On Friday, June the 26th, at 1800, which is 6 p.m. civilian time, the Heroes Among Us speaker series will present Heroes Among Us, the 25th anniversary of the First Gulf War. The event will give an opportunity for our veterans locally who participated in that war to share their experiences with us. It will also give us an opportunity to honor all of those veterans who served in that war.
Be sure to mark your calendar. That's Friday, June 26th at 6 p.m. at the Veterans Memorial Park right there by the Bay Bridge, 200 South 10th Avenue in Pensacola. Heroes Among Us, the 25th anniversary of the First Gulf War. Bring your own chairs or blankets to sit on and enjoy the park.
And it's going to be a great event, one that can't be missed.
I agree. Get there early to get a good seat.
The Fifth Fleet sailor is a highly motivated, highly trained, agile sailor. It's very quick to respond to an ever-changing environment. That's the type of sailors we want. They're the best we have.
We have broken the sound barrier and pioneered new paths to space. But where is that new frontier? What barriers will we break next? Every day, we are given the opportunity to sign our name to history. Just close your eyes and look inside. You are that new frontier. I'm General Mark Welsh. These are my heroes, and we are American Airmen.
So let's bring on Captain Erb and General Thiessen. Captain Erb, welcome to the show.
Thank you very
Welcome.
much. Glad to be here. Glad
General.
to be here.
Great to be here.
Great here.
Welcome, General.
Great to see you.
Have a seat and make yourselves comfortable.
Thank you.
So once again, welcome to both of you, and thank you for your service. Captain,
so.
Captain Erb, first, if you don't mind, I'd like to start with you. You are here at NAS Pensacola,
That is correct.
and your command is?
The Center for Naval Aviation Technical Training.
Is that a readiness command?
Well, I like to think so. It is a training command, but the foundation of all readiness in the Navy starts with the training of our military personnel. So Center for Naval Aviation Technical Training, or in the military, you recall, we like our acronyms, or CNAT, C-N-A-T-T. We're responsible for all aviation training for Navy and Marine Corps personnel, at least the entry-level training. So we provide everything except actual flight training for our Navy and Marine Corps aviation personnel. So from boot camp and then throughout their careers.
General Thiessen, I know you're currently the CEO of the Naval Aviation Museum Foundation, but you were previously responsible for a huge operation, all the Marines, the Marine Corps Pacific, the commander of the United States Marine Corps Pacific. That's a huge operation. Can you tell us about what it takes to run all of that?
Well, each combatant commander has a component command, meaning Army, Air Force, Navy, Marines, and I was a component commander for Pacific Command. So in the Pacific Command plans, all of their operational plans and all of their operations, I was in charge of the Marines aspect or responsibilities in that regard. And that's pretty much it. Each of the services have their componency represented in our COCOMs, as we call them, combatant commands.
Well, both of you have had numerous experiences in a lot of different jobs, but this show basically is about our logistical folks because they are, and I think, the backbone of our military. So would you, General, and then you, Captain, address your thoughts on just the broad topic of logistics in your command? You've commanded. So what part did logistics play for you?
General Gilley, you've commanded too.
Yes,
and
I have.
you and I both know very well that there's a saying in the military service that young warriors talk tactics and old warriors talk logistics. So there is no such a thing as any kind of operation that doesn't include logistics if you're going to be able to sustain it or complete it.
And you, Captain?
Well, as the general was more of a warfighter, and I am one of those support personnel. I'm an aerospace engineering duty officer, and I focus on maintenance. And maintenance is one of our key logistics elements, both for Navy and Marine Corps. So I have been one of those individuals from an early age, even as a lieutenant general, that thought about the logistics aspects of supporting our warfighter.
You said aerospace.
Aerospace maintenance duty officer.
Explain what that is.
Okay, aerospace maintenance duty officers focus on the acquisition and sustainment of all of our aviation forces. So we are involved from, you talked in the introduction about logistics involves the acquisition and the research and development and how we field our aviation systems, and we're involved in that. The sustainment is actually being out assigned in squadrons or repair activities, or also now as I'm part of the training aspects with training all our aviation technicians and some of our aviators as they begin their career. And so throughout my career I've been involved in logistics in just about every phase of what we need to do to support our aviation forces.
General, could you tell our audience a little bit about operational readiness?
Well, operational readiness is kind of the backbone. I mean, it all begins and ends right there, all right? Any conflict that we get involved in is going to be a come-as-you-are event. And you're either ready or you're not. You're either trained or you're not. You can either sustain it or you can't. So operational readiness is going to be this complex, multi-tiered assessment, that you throw your weight into in terms of training and preparation day in and day out at every single level of the force projection criteria.
So logistics is just one part of that readiness, and you as a commander had to evaluate, had to motivate, because logistics has always been something that a lot of soldiers and officers and enlisted kind of found boring. They thought it early part of their career, and they avoided some of the jobs. But it's so important, and trying to get the young soldiers to understand that. But how did you evaluate your logistics aspect on the readiness?
Well, I of course think that logistics is the most exciting part of what we do in the military, since that's my field. But you're right, sometimes getting people motivated about all those aspects to support the warfighter, because the most exciting jobs often are what the warfighter is doing: flying the aircraft, taking a ship to sea, or a submarine, going out and being operational. But you can't get there, as the general said, without those logistics support elements in place. How do we move people? How do we move parts? Do we have the parts we need? Do we know how to repair our systems? And so as I've been involved in the military, it's been starting out with, as an aircraft maintenance officer, just learning about how to order parts and know what we need to repair an aircraft, to actually managing that, and then leading a repair facility where we do the component repair, and then moving on up until where I get involved more on the acquisition side, with looking at the entire life cycle sustainment of an aircraft, or a different weapon system. But as you stated, there's so many aspects that don't seem all glamorous, but if we don't have those logistics elements in place, then I wouldn't be able to support personnel such as the general or any of our naval aviators out there. If you miss one of those key logistics elements, something won't be in place, and then we can't have that operational readiness we need to support our nation.
And that's why shows like this is so important, because what it does is let those young men and women who are going to be joining the military understand even before they get there, because they'll see a lot of movies and they see John Wayne and they see Audie Murphy and they see the warfighters, and when they raise their hand, in their mind they're saying, I want to do that, I want to be a SEAL, I want to be a Ranger. But in fact, if everybody were in those positions, we would fail. So educating our public here about, even if you are a motor sergeant, I think my motor sergeant was the most important part of my unit. I mean, I didn't know as much as I should about motor mechanics, but what I did was have my motor sergeant educate me so I could motivate my soldiers.
You probably don't know this, but I teach junior ROTC at Gulf Breeze High School now that I've retired, and the students always want me to tell some sort of story. I think what their real motive is to try not to do the book stuff. They just want to hear my stories. But could either one of you tell us a story about your biggest logistical challenge during your careers?
Well, I'll take a stab at it. Of course, every time you do an operation, you have logistical challenges. But in the Pacific, you're dealing with very large distances between countries in a huge body of water. Unless you've operated there, it's hard to fathom the amount of space that is involved. Logistics over a long distance is a huge complicator. So the logistics of projecting a Marine Expeditionary Unit, or the logistics of supporting and plans a Marine force is the biggest challenge that I would have, because when logistics comes down to basically what do you need each day and how many days are you going to need it, right? After that, it's weight and volume. And then what means do you have to get that done? So when you're dealing with a ship, you have a lot of options, because you can deal with tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of tons with multiple ships. If you're dealing with smaller ships or aircraft, it starts becoming smaller very quick. If you're dealing overland, it becomes stressed very quickly.
And
So from my experience, not as quite a high level as the general, when I've been in squadrons where we're concerned with supporting that actual airframe. I've been in an H-60 squadron and a helicopter and a submarine squadron light. I've also been in a VRC squadron where we fly the C2. That is a fleet logistics squadron. That ties directly in with what we're discussing. I was also in a VAQ squadron with the EA-6B Prowler. That's a electronic attack squadron. In each of, in each of those, I was more specifically responsible for the day-to-day maintenance, the maintenance management, and then either when we were deploying some of our forces or actually going on to deployment at the tactical level, as to get more tactical than the general explained, how do I move my personnel, my parts, what do we need to take, how do we get the people there, do we have enough to sustain us, but also there's a lot of other individuals that are involved with that. So I'm in the squadron concerned about my squadron, but if we're on an aircraft carrier, there's a lot of support on board that aircraft carrier, but making sure we identify our needs to the carrier so they can have the right people and the right parts. And meanwhile, keeping our personnel motivated to be able to do that. So each of the different types of squadrons I was in had different challenges. With the VAQ squadron, the EA-6B, that was my most recent squadron, one of the challenges there, it's an older airframe. We've been flying the EA-6B. In the Navy, we are just getting ready to sundown. The Marine Corps is flying for a little bit longer. So when you deal with the aging aircraft, different things break. That you didn't expect, or you might have corrosion that you didn't expect because we kept the aircraft around longer than the Navy and the Marine Corps had planned. So dealing with that, the sustainment with things we never expected to happen, and keeping your personnel motivated when they know that maybe we won't have the parts because we didn't expect them to fail, and training them with skills that we never expected them to need because we never thought we'd have to do those repairs. So each community had a different challenge. I mentioned the VRC squadron. As a logistics squadron, we were responsible for moving a lot of those parts, people, equipment, food, medical supplies, you name it, from ashore to the aircraft carrier. So in addition to actually maintaining those aircraft, we had to make sure that that mission was complete so that whoever we were supporting got what they needed to continue with their mission. So it's all very much intertwined from each community. But again, I was at the very tactical level most of my career where we were doing those day-to-day maintenance and support and getting ready for that next deployment.
Now, you graduated from the Navy Academy in Annapolis.
Yes, I did.
Correct?
That's correct.
How much logistics did they have in your curriculum? Did they talk about logistics, or how did you do it?
No, when I attended the Naval Academy, we didn't, and it may have changed since then. It's only been a few years since I attended the Naval Academy. So we didn't talk much about logistics. The focus was really on the operational aspects, becoming a pilot, a naval flight officer, a surface warfare officer, a submariner. When I graduated from the Naval Academy, a lot of those communities were limited in what women could do. So when I learned about aviation maintenance and the logistics and support aspects, it was something very interesting to me because it was different than what a lot of women could do, but it was something we never discussed at the Naval Academy. So it made it very intriguing about what I would do in my career. But I think today there is a lot more covered in the curriculum because we can't fight a war without that, and we can't do our nation's calling without that logistics there to support those that are forward deployed.
I agree.
I used to teach at the Air Force Academy, and we created a exercise where we purposely would break the logistical train and disrupt military operations and get it so the cadets would come back to that conclusion as if I can't get the beans and the bullets there, I can't fight the war.
Now I'm going to ask the question of you, General, and it was something I read. I was reading about your retirement, and it was not anything bad. I know. I was reading about your retirement, and one of your friends who was introducing you or talking about you referred to you by your call sign. And I wanted to know what was that call sign. I looked a little further, and it was
Drano.
And tell us a little bit about what call. How does that tradition works?
Okay, to understand call signs, you need to understand a little bit about aviation. In my case, Marine Corps or naval aviation, and it is an extremely dynamic. It is an extremely team-oriented operation, and instead of using alphanumeric call signs, which is the standard in the military in most cases, it's much more personal and much more intuitive when you have nicknames. Now, I happened to get my nickname in the 70s, and the most popular TV show at the time was Happy Days. So everybody was going around talking like Fonzarelli at the time, and so everybody was Al-O or Bucko or Bobo. My first name is Dwayne. It became Dwayno, which degenerated to Drano. And so it's either that or my caustic personality won. But that's where it came from. But I want to get back to what I started with here. It's a very personal, so if you're doing communication in the air, you're much more readily able to call somebody by a call sign than you are an alphanumeric. So Drano, come right 360 is likely to get a response before Alpha Bravo Zulu 506 would.
So it plays into readiness.
It plays into operational efficiency.
Exactly.
Plus, it looks good on me.
Well, I'd like to thank both of you for being on our show. We have thoroughly enjoyed it. One of the things that we always do with our guests.
But before we do that,
okay,
I have to always stop you on this.
Okay.
Before we do that, we have what, and I call it alibis. And I always use alibis because when you're firing down range, at the end of the firing session, the range officer or range commander would say, "Are there any alibis?" Which means you have some rounds you haven't expended. And therefore, they'll let you focus on your targets or in the range area and fire at will. So at this time, because we've been asking all the questions and you've been answering our questions, but we'll give you an opportunity now to end this interview with anything that you from your heart or something that you want to say, because we have the public that's listening and looking. So what, do you have anything, or do you have an alibi, or would you have an alibi?
Well, I do, and I promise not to talk too long, but being in the training world now and knowing that that is a key part of our readiness, I just want to reiterate that the skills of our people, they form the foundation of our combat readiness. And if we don't train them correctly from the start, from boot camp to their initial skills training and throughout their careers, we won't have the combat ready forces that we need. And so I know that Center for Naval Aviation Technical Training, we deliver high quality training, but when I look across all of the Navy and in the Naval Education and Training Command, we're actually absolutely committed to training our sailors right, and our Marines as well that fall under the Navy training. And as I said, without training them right and giving them the skills they need to be successful in the fleet, we wouldn't have logistics and we wouldn't have that operational readiness. And so that's our foundation. Fleet readiness starts in our schoolhouses and we continue throughout a sailor and Marine's career.
General, I know generals don't like alibis because there's no such thing as an alibi, but do you have one?
Alibis. I love alibis.
Do you have one?
And I think Captain Erb nailed it. It's people first, foremost, and always. It always is. I mean, Captain Erb wouldn't say it here, but I'm more than willing to. She's responsible directly for the training of over 15,000 people a year, all right? That's huge. That's absolutely huge. And there are other commands that are just like that. So it doesn't matter whether you're talking logistics, which she's an expert in, or operations. It gets very personal very quick, and we have an obligation. For instance, in your experience, when a member of the 101st or the 82nd jumps out of an airplane with 80 pounds, all right, that's the extent of their logistics until you can get to them. And that's a pretty big deal to that soldier right immediately, right? And when you project a force, food, water, shelter, clothing, medical, all of these things become pivotal. You may not win a battle because of logistics, but you sure imperil your ability to fight if you don't have the logistics or just your presence, a presence mission. So she nailed it. It is a people business. It always will be, and I was proud to be part of it, and she's doing a great job here at Pensacola.
Well, we always end the show, and David was about to do what I always do because I love this part, being Army. We always have our guests do forward march with us. We do every command, every outfit or unit have that particular command, forward march, the preparatory forward and then march. So we want to do this together. And I usually say that I would win, but since I have a 3-star general, you would probably win, but we're going to do it together. We're going to say, and why don't you count it off since you the ranking officer? So say 1, 2, 3. Can Marines count that for? No, I'm just joking.
Oh!
1, 2, 3, and then we'll do a forward march together.
I'm with you here. 1, 2, 3.
Forward march.
Very good.
Coming to you live from the beautiful Gulf Coast of Florida, home of the Naval Air Station Pensacola and the Blue Angel, Eglin Air Force Base and Hurlburt Field. This is another edition of Forward March with your hosts, Al Gilley and David G. Landfair.
Hello, and welcome to Forward March. I'm Al Gilley.
And I'm David G. Landfair. Once again, welcome. Thank you for coming. And Jill, if you don't mind, I'd like to start.
My second set of orders took me to VF 43, handpicked to be with the aggressors. My 30 brothers were every day.
Well, on this date in history,
You wanted a message to send out to the audience, and I'm going to give you that opportunity. I don't know everything you're going to say, but if it means that much in your heart as a Pearl Harbor survivor, lay it on them. Tell me what you got to say.
I love Forward March.
My name is Jeff, and I love Forward March.
Hi, I'm Susan. I love Forward March.
We're back. I'm David G. Landfair.
And I'm Al Gilley.
We're here with Don Parker with On This Day in History. It is brought to you by Barberi Heating and Air of Pensacola. I've talked to Susan Barberi, who is the second generation owner of Barberi Heating and Air, and she told me this is their 40th anniversary, so congratulations to Barberi Heating and Air of Pensacola. And it's summertime, so time to get that air conditioning checked. Call Barberi Heating and Air. And now, Don Parker, what do you have for us today with On This Day in History?
well, today, since we're talking about what makes the U.S. military run, one of the most important aspects of logistics is medical care for our troops. And on this day in history, June the 17th, 1898, the Navy Hospital Corps was established to provide health care to sailors, Marines, and to those entrusted in their care on the battlefield, at sea, under the sea, and at military treatment facilities around the world. And today, the Navy Hospital Corps celebrates its 115th birthday.
Doesn't the beginning of the hospital corps date back to the Revolutionary War?
That's right, Al. A typical medical unit aboard a ship in that time was made up of 2 or 3 men, usually a surgeon, a surgeon's mate, and an enlisted man who served as an assistant. The surgeon's mate was usually a doctor, but was only assigned to make like 1 cruise at a time. Now, Herman Melville, the author of Moby Dick, gives a very good description of the surgeon steward aboard the frigate, the USS United States, in his book, White Jacket. That was his account of Navy life going all the way back to 1843. He wrote, "An official called the surgeon steward, assisted by subordinates, presided over the sick bay. He was always to be found at his post by night and by day." Now, during World War I, hospital corpsmen served throughout the fleet. They earned particular distinction on the Western Front with the Marine Corps. Hospital corpsmen were awarded 684 military decorations during the war. That included 22 Medals of Honor, 55 Navy Crosses, and 237 Silver Stars. In World War II, hospital corpsmen hit the beach with the Marines in every battle in the Pacific. You may remember Joe Rosenthal's Pulitzer Prize-winning photo of the flag raising on Iwo Jima that was taken on the 5th day of that battle on Mount Suribachi. It depicts pharmacist mate 2nd Class John Bradley among the group of Marines on Mount Suribachi that day. Corpsman also, of course, served on thousands of ships and submarines during World War II. Hospital corpsmen continued to serve at sea and ashore. They accompanied Marine units into battle during the Korean and the Vietnam Wars. Corpsmen were always found at the forefront of battle, at the ready to respond to wounded servicemen and women. For example, 15 hospital corpsmen were counted among the dead following the bombing of the Marine Corps barracks in Beirut in 1983. Corpsmen also served in the Iraq and Afghanistan wars, and not just in field hospitals and clinics, but for convoys and patrols in the field during combat operations. Because of the need for hospital corpsmen in a vast array of foreign, domestic, and shipboard duty stations, as well as with United States Marine Corps, the Hospital Corps is the largest occupational rating in the Navy, with about 25,000 members, both active duty and reserve. It's interesting to note that the first physician assistants ever trained were selected from Navy corpsmen who had combat experience in Vietnam. The Navy trained its own physician assistants, drawing from the ranks of qualified independent duty hospital corpsmen. When training is completed, they become officers in the Medical Service Corps. Today, of course, physician assistants are part of every civilian medical clinic or hospital. Former Navy hospital corpsmen are also represented in many medical disciplines as physicians, nurses, medical administrators, or in other walks of life. The rating of hospital corpsmen is the most decorated of the United States Navy, with 22 Medals of Honor total, 174 Navy Crosses, 31 Navy Distinguished Service Medals, 946 Silver Stars, and 1,582 Bronze Stars. 20 naval ships have been named after hospital corpsmen.
Well, we want to say thank you for your service to all those who have served with the U.S. Naval Hospital Corps.
And a forward march. Happy birthday to the U.S. Naval Hospital Corps. Hooah! Happy birthday.
And thank you, Don Parker, for another outstanding segment on this day in history.
Home is where the heart is. Making sure that your home is cool and comfortable this summer is what Barbera Heating and Air is all about. Barbera Heating and Air has served both residential and commercial customers in the Gulf Coast community for more than 40 years. Summer is upon us. Call us now to schedule an appointment to check your AC unit. Mention Forward March and receive a 10% discount. Barbera Heating and Air, where your comfort is our business. Don't wait. Call today. Call 850-476-8638.
And we're back. I'm David G. Landfair.
And I'm Al Gilley.
Once again, we'd like to thank the sponsor of our show, Harley-Davidson of Pensacola. Until you've been on a Harley-Davidson, you haven't been on a motorcycle.
Around the world, around the clock, in defense of all we hold dear back home, America's Navy.
Now it's time for our deployment shout out, which we send out to our men and women who are stationed overseas. Since our program today emphasized what makes our military run, we're sending a shout out to all of the men and women overseas who are doing just that, making our military run.
Our deployment shout out today goes to Sergeant Stephen Holliday III. Sergeant Holliday is with the 351st Aviation Support Battalion from the South Carolina National Guard out of Sumter, South Carolina. He's currently deployed to Kuwait.
That's right. The 351st Aviation Support Battalion performs many diverse and important missions during peacetime and when deployed for war. It's considered a heavy transportation company with numerous trucks, a water purification detachment, a medical support detachment, and an aviation intermediate maintenance detachment, all vital elements of keeping an army moving and well supported. They provide the special transport of heavy equipment, including sling-loading vehicles from helicopters.
Sergeant Holliday, your shout out today comes from your wife, Chandrea, and your beautiful daughters, Acacia and Ashaya, with a special tail wag from your pet dog, Kevin. They all say, love you, Daddy, and send big hugs for Father's Day. Happy Father's Day. And to all of you out there, all of you fathers who have served out there, a big Forward March, Happy Father's Day to you.
And from all of us here at Forward March, a big hurrah and thank you for your service.
They didn't join this team to win championships or become famous. They joined because there is important work to be done, and only some able to do it. They are brighter, better educated, led, and equipped than any team in history. They are doctors, lawyers, engineers, technologists, and combat troops, all prepared for whatever comes their way. You'll find them where the lights don't flash, and the only contract they sign is with themselves and their country. One day, they may be asked what they did to make a difference in this world, and they can respond, I became a soldier.
And we're back. What a great show we've had today, David.
I agree, Al. Next up is our opinion segment. Our senior correspondent for opinion segment is Cass Phillips, and he's on vacation today. So today we have retired Navy reservist and Pearl Harbor historian Robert Nicholson.
So who do we have with us today, Robert?
Today we have with us retired United States Marine Corps Lieutenant General Dwayne Thiessen.
Great to be here. Great to be here.
So let's talk a little bit about your background, General. You retired from the United States Marine Corps in 2012 after serving as commander of the Marine Corps Pacific. Is that correct?
That is correct. That is correct.
And you've seen a lot of changes in the military since that time, most of them good.
That is correct. I would agree with that.
Okay, public opinion of the military is at an all-time high. Why do you think that is?
Well, the first element that I would stress is the quality of the individuals who are in uniform today. They are first class. They are dedicated in a way that is almost idealistic compared to the general public. They are committed to a singular purpose, a mission, and that commands respect no matter where you go.
I see. I agree. We've been able to cut military spending, but have advanced the efficiency of the military at the same time. How are we able to do that?
We've cut spending, but the largest percentage of our spending cut has been in the reduced operations that we've seen. Now, I will add, though, to the gist of your question, the individual operations that we are conducting are also more efficient, and that reduces cost as well. So you're seeing a combination of things that are saving us money as a nation and making us more effective across the board in a broad spectrum.
Okay. What about the level of training in the military? Do they contribute to the operating efficiency?
Yep.
And if so, how?
The level of training is the absolute foundation for any capability in any operation. And it's not just the individual, it's only the individual, because those individuals are parts of units, and those units are part of forces. And it's when every individual does their job in a professional and effective manner that the whole force can project itself or do its mission in an effective manner. So it really doesn't matter whether you're talking about a ground unit or an aviation unit generating sorties or a ship who's running the systems on that ship and launching aircraft in missions. Across the board, every single individual has to be highly trained, highly proficient, and it's the combination of all of that that creates the effectiveness.
Okay. What about the technology for operations and training and logistics? Do you think this contributes to the efficiency of the military?
Absolutely. I was in the military for 38 years, 10 months. And during that time frame, I saw changes in technology that are incredible, are just incredible. Something as simple as night vision goggles increased our night operations 100-fold, 1,000-fold. I mean, imagine having the ability to determine things at night or at day in the same level. Your effectiveness goes up at night, and it gives you an advantage. Our accuracy of weapons. Weapon accuracy has increased incredibly, along with precision weapons or GPS and the various other technologies that came in there. When you can use those technologies, expend less ordnance in a more effective manner, you have leveraged your force capability in a huge way.
Okay, thank you. What are the most difficult things to control when running a large organization like the military?
The most difficult thing to control. Everything is changing all the time. And it is very difficult sometimes to get welded. There's a tendency to get welded to a plan, welded to an idea, welded to an objective, and look for things to validate what you wish would happen. But things are changing all the time, and with that, you have to be in stride with those changes as they occur so that you can take advantage or position your force so that you're not at a disadvantage.
Okay. What do you think the military is going to look like in the next 25 years from an efficiency standpoint?
Well, Robert, strap in and pull your hat down, because it's going to be just as wild as it's been in the last 25. There's a tendency to talk about technology in terms of the numbers of drones that we're going to see, or the numbers of automated processes that we're going to see. But I think you're going to see changes in communication, you're going to see changes in intelligence, you're going to see changes in the various aspects of coordination and in logistics that rival anything we saw in the past 25 years. And wherever that opportunity exists, we need to take advantage of it for the purpose of leveraging the capabilities of our people in uniform.
Well, thank you, General. That was an exciting preview into the future of our military. In the next couple of weeks, I understand, we're having drone technology right here on this show. So thank you so much.
It's great to be here.
Thank you, General Thiessen, for coming. We really appreciate it. And thank you, Robert, for filling in for Cass Phillips. Thank you for your service, and thank you, Robert, for your service.
Thank both of you.
We'll be right back after a short break. Don't go away.
There are a few who move toward the sounds of chaos, ready to respond at a moment's notice. And when the time comes, they are the first to move toward the sounds of tyranny, injustice, and despair. They are forged in the crucible of training. They are the few, the proud, the Marines.
And we're back. You know, David, I really enjoyed listening to the general and the captain talk about what makes this military run. And I'm sure our audience gained a new appreciation of how important our logistical folks are and how important they are to the war fight.
I agree, and I think there were some folks out there who didn't realize how vital logistics is. It makes me remember during Operation Desert Storm, General Schwarzkopf thanked his logistics staff for moving what equated to an entire city from the United States to Saudi Arabia in order to launch Operation Desert Storm.
I agree, David. A huge job well done. And a hooah to the general. Forward March is a production of Responsible Media Arts. Our writer and executive producer is Diana Roberts. Our senior producer is Linda Silva. Our production supervisor is Billy Nicholson. Our editor is Robert Nicholson. Our technical advisor is Jill Nelson. We are filmed on location in the film studio of Blab TV, right here in downtown, beautiful downtown Pensacola.
Forward March can be seen every Wednesday evening at 7 o'clock on NBC WJTC UTV Channel 44.
And Forward March can be heard on air every Thursday morning at 10 a.m. Cumulus Media WCOA 1370.
And Al, I only have one more thing to say before you go about your week. You know what that is?
Let's say it together.
Okay, 1, 2, 3.
Forward March! We'll see you next week.
See you next week.
I'll be there.
I'll be there too.
Will you be here?